All right, so today we're going to dive into a really fascinating, kind of weird corner of international relations. We're talking about that diplomatic gray area, where you have these entities that look like states, they act like states, they've got governments and people, but for some reason, they're not fully recognized as one.
So here's the big question, right? What happens then? How does the world deal with these political bodies that are just stuck in this kind of limbo? I mean, they've got all the pieces of a country, but they're missing that one crucial thing, the universal stamp of approval. So, how do you even talk to them?
Well, the answer lies in a couple of really clever diplomatic tools: observer status and limited recognition. And listen, these aren't just some obscure terms you'd find in a textbook. No, these are the actual powerful, practical tools that let the global community navigate some incredibly tricky political situations, all without forcing anyone to draw a hard line in the sand.
Okay, let's get into what this diplomatic gray area really is. It's so easy to think of statehood as just, an on-off switch. You're either a country or you're not. Simple. But the reality? It's way more of a spectrum, with all these different levels of recognition and participation along the way.
And these two concepts we mentioned, observer status and limited recognition, they are the crucial middle ground on that very spectrum. They give everyone a formal way to interact that, and, this is key, deliberately stop short of a full diplomatic endorsement. It creates this essential space for dialogue and cooperation that, frankly, might not exist otherwise.
All right, let's break down that first tool. Let's talk about what observer status really means. Picture the world's biggest international meetings, right? Think the United Nations. Having observer status is basically like getting an invitation to pull up a chair to the main table, even if you're not an official, card-carrying member of the club.
So an observer, think of the Holy See or Palestine at the UN. They can listen to all the debates, they can get up and speak, contribute their perspective, and talk with all the member states. They are absolutely in the conversation. But, and this is the big but, the crucial distinction, they almost never get a vote. They can influence, for sure, but they can't decide.
I love this phrase because it just captures the whole idea perfectly. It's all about access, not acceptance. See, it's a super pragmatic arrangement. It gives an entity access to the machinery of international diplomacy, all without legally saying, yep, you're a sovereign state. It's just a masterful political compromise that keeps those important doors open.
Okay, now let's flip to the other side of the coin. Limited recognition. And believe me, this is a completely different animal. It's not about getting a seat at a big organization like the UN. No, this is all about individual countries making their own calls, one by one. And as you can imagine, that leads to a very, very mixed picture.
So what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, for an entity like Taiwan or Kosovo, it means they might have a full-blown formal embassy in one capital city and then just a small trade office in another. Their diplomatic status literally changes depending on which border you cross. It's pretty wild.
Okay, so let's put these side by side, because when you do, the strategic difference is crystal clear. Observer status, that comes from a big group like the UN. It's all about getting a foot in the door of the global system. It's a standardized, non-voting role. But limited recognition, that's more like a patchwork quilt, Painstakingly stitched together one country at a time. It's a direct, but totally fragmented push for legitimacy on the world stage. Now, all of this might sound incredibly complicated, right? So you've got to wonder, why do these ambiguous arrangements even exist? I mean, why not just have a clear yes or no for every single entity? Well, the answer comes down to one of the most powerful forces in all of diplomacy: flexibility. You can kind of think of these arrangements as diplomatic safety valves. They let countries talk to and engage with entities they don't officially recognize. It allows them to be part of vital global discussions, on things like health or climate, all without making a permanent, legally binding political commitment. It's really all about keeping those lines of communication open, especially when things are tense.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the why. But here's where all this high-level diplomacy really hits the pavement. So what? What's the real-world impact? Well, the consequences are surprisingly concrete, and they affect millions of people every single day.
An entity's status, it really determines just about everything. Can it sign a binding international climate treaty? Can its national airline fly into another country's airspace? And this is a huge one. Will a passport from that entity actually be accepted when you get to a border crossing? It even affects the little things, like whether its diplomats can get out of a parking ticket. Seriously, it all comes down to recognition.
So when you get right down to it, understanding these ideas isn't just some academic exercise. It's really the key to seeing how our world actually works. It shows you the clever, ingenious ways that we can all cooperate on huge global challenges, even when there are deep, deep political disagreements about who even gets to be called a state in the first place.
Look, if you take just one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Diplomacy is just not binary. It's not black and white. In fact, diplomacy absolutely thrives in the gray areas. That's where it creates these innovative solutions to navigate a messy, complicated, and often contradictory world.
And this quote really says it all, doesn't it? Instead of getting stuck with just two stark choices, full recognition or total isolation, the international community has cleverly crafted a third path. It's a way to engage, a way to talk, and a way to solve problems, together.
Which of course leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. Is all this deliberate ambiguity a bug in the system, something that just creates confusion and problems? Or is it an essential feature, a vital, necessary tool for keeping communication going and maintaining stability in our incredibly complex world? Something to think about.